What's up, everybody? Thanks for tuning in to The Standard. Today, our guest is Coach Judd Benedict, I guess retired Coach Judd Benedict. For those listening, Judd put off the field on the map. He really trusted me when no one else really did, and we wouldn't be where we're at if it weren't for him. Coach, I appreciate you being on here.
Oh, man, it's awesome. I'm glad to be here, T. Can't wait to catch up.
Yes, sir. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Yeah, it's life's different right now, different phase of life, but I'm doing awesome.
What are you doing right now?
So I'm an assistant principal at Owyhee High School, which does make things a little confusing, right? Because I coached at Mountain View forever. I've got a kid at Rocky Mountain, and I work at Owyhee. So sometimes I have to check my jacket to see what I'm wearing, what logo I've got on. So being an assistant principal there, lots of different roles that come along with that.
Yeah, I got to ask you miss coaching?
I do, for sure. Yeah. I think what I miss the most is the interaction with kids. It's a little bit different when you're an assistant principal. Sometimes you're seeing them because they're in trouble. You're tracking them down for grades or attendance, things like that. When you're coaching, it's just different, the way you get to know kids, the relationships you built with them. So that's what I miss the most. I guess the second piece of that would be the camaraderie with coaches.
Yeah.
It's kind of a fraternity. So I miss the relational. Both things are relational. I miss that about both of those, relationships with kids and relationships with coaches.
And I think that's what you were the best at. That's why I feel like you've had such a huge impact on me and so many others.
I appreciate it.
So you started, I don't even know if you know this, but you started coaching in 2007 at Mountain View, right?
Correct.
So that year I graduated, but so you didn't actually coach me because we played in 2006, but I graduated in 2007, which wish I would have had a chance to play for you. But then, so when I came back and I started off the field, you didn't even know that, you didn't even know anything about me or us. But I don't know if you remember how kind of we started. I remember the first year was we tried to do a little bit of something, didn't really work. We kind of went it. The next year we didn't really do anything. But then the next year you gave me a 5-minute speed station. I don't know if you remember that. Remember when we were on like those quick stations?
Yeah, that's not very much time. That was kind of rude of me. I should have given you a little more time.
Well, that I remember. I was like, one, I loved Mountain View. Two, all the great things I heard about you, and Ras was one of my other big, huge mentors, and he spoke so highly of you too. But it was like, okay, I really wanted to get football, and every single day, all I did was teach the 40 stance because I knew you didn't love that. Well, you didn't care about the 40, right?
Yeah.
But I knew the kids wanted it. Next year, you gave me like 30 minutes, and then we finally got to run the whole program.
Yeah. I remember the whole progression, really. Actually, the memories that I have is you would come into my fitness classes.
Yeah.
So I was teaching fitness classes early on, and you would ask if you could come and do some workouts with the classes. And at first I was kind of skeptical, like, well, what are you going to do? What are we working on? And you're like, don't worry, we've got it all laid out. We can do speed, we can do agility, we can do some strength stuff, we can work core. So you came in with a couple other guys, and we would do kind of some spot lessons, like you drop in on some different classes and hit the workouts for those classes. And so that was the initial meeting that we had. I mean, you probably remember it too, but we'd be in the upper gym there, or sometimes we'd get the main gym, and that was part of my fitness class there. And then after that, I think you started working out of a facility there off of Overland. And so we started kind of referring kids a little bit there, a little bit at a time. I'd go over and check it out. You had a smaller space, but you were making the most out of what you had. And people started catching on to that more and more. We were sending more kids. And then you're like, hey, our goal is to really get into the schools, not just have our facility off-site, but like we want to get into the schools. And so you and I just started talking. Well, tell me about that. What does that look like? At the time, I was still a little bit apprehensive, not because it was you, but just like I'm not sure what I want to hand over, in the program. You finally get a chance to be a head coach. And so, I kind of wanted to make sure everything was running the way I wanted it to run. And so we would have, like you said, we'd have stations outside when we weren't in the weight room. And we had a speed station, an agility station, a plyometric station. I can't even remember all of them. And the guys would rotate. So like you said, that's how you started. And then eventually, as you and I met more, it was more, the conversation was more like, I'd love to be able to hand this off to you
Yeah.
because you have a passion for it. And I don't as much anymore. When you first start, you're trying to do everything as a coach. You're coaching football, you're running the booster club, you're doing workouts, and I got to a point where I didn't want to continue to do that piece of it, and I could also see you were really good at it and passionate about it. So eventually, like you said, took over the whole strength and conditioning program and designed the whole thing. And then our job was just to try to support you with coaches there to pump kids up. But that was a fun progression, man. I like to think that I was with you through the whole thing.
100% were. And now I get
So-
your two boys, which is awesome too.
Yes, yeah, they were just little dorks when you first started.
Now there's some studs. Except for they're wearing black and purple, which is crazy. I got to ask you though. So the fact that you brought that up, this is something that I struggle with all the time. Like Eastern Idaho literally called us yesterday to build a facility there, and it happens a lot. Like Ontario, Salt Lake, sometimes Coeur d'Alene. What worries me is in thinking about it, people are like, and I get asked by coaches, like people will call me up, hey, how'd you start it? What should I do when they're doing stuff like that? And I'm like, man, I was in every school every single day all the time. And we had nobody for 2 years.
I know. You were grinding.
Well, we had people, but it was $1 here, $1 there.
Yep.
The biggest thing I think that we had to build was that relationship.
Yeah, for sure.
Say you were a coach now and we've been in business long enough that we have, like,
Yeah.
do you think that we would have validity? Like, you've never met us. And I mean, be
Right.
honest with me. Like,
Right.
so, like, if I went to a different area, to me, football coaches, again, the weight room is a huge part of what they do.
Yeah.
But if I get the football program, we get everybody, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Your numbers are greater. It's-
Well, and then the other coaches see it.
Yeah.
If we have success, injuries go down.
Yep.
You know what I mean? We win. Things go well. To create that relationship with a football coach, how do you think I could start that without spending 2 years there? Because
you
that,
don't have that.
I mean, I mean,
Yeah.
looking at that, I mean, do you think there's a way to do that, or
Well, I
do I
think
stay local, or?
That's a tough one. I mean, you don't want to give up. I don't think what you're doing local, and by give up, I mean you don't want your business to get hit or your energy.
Right.
All of that. There's only so much of you to go around, and this is sort of your home base. You know what I mean? And to get all these other places involved, I think would be fantastic. It's going to take more manpower, probably.
Right.
To be able to do that. Because you want to be able to maintain this place where you started it and still have relationships, all those connections. To do it somewhere else, like you said, it initially would take that time, but being that you're not going to live there and you don't have that time, I think now what you're looking at is track record, like all the people that have gone through there, the success stories that you've had working with Boise State athletes, working with College of Idaho athletes from all over the valley that are playing college that still come back to you, professional players that come back and work out with you, coaches in the area that can say, absolutely, like we handed off the program, I was hesitant about it, whatever their reservations were, but they're going, hey, it works, they do a fantastic job, our kids love them. I think every kid that goes through your guys' facilities would have great things to say about you. So it's your track record and it's those testimonials,
Right.
from people that have gone through. And so, I mean, personally, I think you're to the point where you could say, listen, I'd love to get to know you. We're going to get to know each other if you want to do this. But I do want you to see what we have done,
Yeah.
and talk to the people that have come through, because there's your proof, right? You don't have to prove it any other way than the athletes that have gone through, and they could speak for you and say, this is what happened when I went off the field. This is the success story that I've had because I went off the field.
Yeah, that manpower, going back to that, I think that is my biggest reservation in the Valley.
Yeah.
We love, we're working on trying to build, right now we're trying to finalize something to where the Owyhee, Middleton, Star, Eagle area,
Yeah.
so then we'd
Yeah.
have that Meridian, East Boise,
Sure.
to where we'd kind of have the whole Treasure Valley. And it's like, in my head, why don't we just double down on that and be the best we can possibly be here? The staff I have right now are unreal. I'm trying to keep these guys as long as I possibly can. Like they're awesome.
Yeah.
We're actually having a lot of coaches apply now. We have I have a group of people I can pick from, which I've never had before. So it's
Yeah.
It's really exciting to go look at that, but that does scare me. And why not maybe just try to get the best we can do here? Maybe just consult on the side. I don't know.
I know, because the people you have too, like the coaches that you have that work for you, can you find that everywhere? Can you replicate that? You know, because then your name's on that, right? And if they're not doing it the same way, and you can't be there every second to watch what's going on, you know, is it the same thing?
Yeah.
You know, is it the same brand? I don't know.
I don't know.
Because it's hard to find those guys that are all in. Right now, you've got a group of people that are all in and they do it right. Can you find enough for all the different areas? You know,
I don't know.
that's
And they're what
that's
make
tricky.
us too. So yeah, that's tricky. So how about with you? So something I never even really got to talk to you about a bunch is your philosophy. So when I talk about you, there's a few different things. It's like behind your back is you created so much intensity, but you also never. Barely saw you ever chew somebody out. You never swore, which is in the football world, even for me, which was a great thing for me because it's something I still have to work on. But you never cussed. You never but you made people wanted to play so hard for you. You know, like a Kulig, you know, reminds me of a guy who gets along with the coaches, but his style is way different than yours. Or like a high level guy, you know, you see him. But what was your philosophy? Where did that come from? And you know, I mean, this is the whole point to get about you to talk about yourself. How did you get guys to play so hard for you while never putting them down, never like really getting at them?
So I think we're all products of our environment, right? Like how we were raised, who we were around, the influences on our life, and all of that kind of shapes our character, shapes our person. And then that character, which is who you truly are, that's going to bleed into how you operate then as a coach. And for me, there's no compartmentalization, you know what I mean? Like I would hope that I'm the same person, coach, dad, you know, all that stuff. You can't compartmentalize that in my opinion. And so your character that's been shaped by your environment hopefully is what's going to bleed into your philosophy and then how you interact with kids, how you lead a team. So for me, I grew up, my dad was a coach. He coached like every sport you could coach. He was at Hillside Junior High for 33 years. Same classroom, coached football, basketball, wrestling, track, everything.
That's awesome.
Coached all my little league teams, you know, baseball, all kinds of stuff. And so as a kid, I was around all the time. I'd go with him, you know, for gear check. I'd go watch some of the practices. I'd go to their games, things like that. And he was very much how you described, or the words you used to describe some of how I interacted with kids. He was very intense, but super relational with the kids, and I could see that they all respected him and loved him. And everybody I ran into then, because I went to Capital, graduated from Capital, that had gone to Hillside. Oh, your dad's Coach Benedict. He's the best. Like, he's my favorite, you know, favorite teacher, favorite coach, that kind of thing. And so watching him, I got to see that he was completely intense and competitive, but it never affected the way he interacted with kids in a positive way. Like he just was super positive with them, uplifting, built people up rather than tore them down, you know. And so I was able to see that. There's a Jimmy Buffett quote that I like, and it says, it takes just as much time to be a jerk as it does to be a nice guy, you know. So it's the same thing, right? So I watched my dad and how he interacted. Then my Optimist coach was very much the same way. He's kind of a local legend, Dan Hardy. I don't know if you know that name at all, but spelled Hardee. And he was our Checkmate Real Estate and then Rainbow Real Estate coach, very much the same way. Like, he called us all men. You know, we were, grade school kids, 5th, 6th, 7th grade, but addressed us always men, you know, and we look at him. And he definitely was a relational coach, but also was intense, you know, had high expectations for us. But he never cussed. My dad never cussed. You know, those guys, that just wasn't ever part of their makeup. In college, I got to play for one of the best college coaches ever. His name is Frosty Westring. He's in the College Football Hall of Fame. One.
Where was that at?
Over Pacific Lutheran
Yep.
University. Yeah, PLU. And that to me was the most, I guess, life-changing in terms of an experience. And so he was that same mold in that we were competitive with everybody, but we never really talked about winning. We talked about being the best that we could be, controlling what we could control. Everything was about attitude and character. We lifted the fear of failure, so you weren't afraid to just lay it all out there because you knew you weren't going to get chewed out. You might get instructed, you might get coached up, but you weren't going to get dog cussed and chewed out. So that allowed you to have total release. That's what he called it, was total release. And so you could go onto the field knowing that I'm going to give it my absolute best shot, and that's going to be good enough. I don't have that fear of failure, wondering if I screw up, am I going to get yanked out of the game,
Right.
that type of thing. The whole program was relational. So that's what I tried to build then. I guess to bring back your whole question is my philosophy was shaped by those guys that I grew up around or were influenced by. And then what we really tried to focus on at Mountain View when I was there was creating a family atmosphere, right? Where the kids loved each other, the coaches loved the kids loved the coaches. It was just that family atmosphere where we were all pulling in the same direction, and guys knew that they could give it their absolute best, and whether they hit the target or not, we were still going to care about them the same. And we also tried to make sure that it didn't matter whether you were a special teams guy or a starter. We tried to have integrity and treat everybody the same way that way, and find ways to make everybody feel important within the program. And so what happens, I think, when you build that kind of family atmosphere, and a lot of guys talk about relational coaching, right? Like you got to build relationships, or players coach, all that, but you actually have to live it out. Like you have to walk it out. And so I was always trying to find coaches that fit my philosophy and believed in the same thing and would pour everything they have into kids and building up kids. And so then what happens is if you have that fear of failure, or that fear of failure is lifted, and you have love for each other, like you'll run through a wall for your buddy. You'll run through a wall for your coach. And the intensity piece of it, that's what athletics are. Like if you're not competitive, if you're not intense, I would question why you're doing it.
Right.
That's just part of it. I think all the greats have to be competitive and have to be intense. I think I still had that, had that piece, and I think we cultivated that competition in our kids and that intensity. But to me, you can do that with any words or any type of language. You don't have to use a cuss word to get your point across. In fact, it takes more creativity to come up with something that isn't a cuss word, and so we would find ways to get guys right to the edge, just frothing at the mouth, ready to play, as far as being intense and going out on the field and getting after somebody. But I like to think we did it the right way within the rules and within the bounds of the game, and we were going to treat the other team with respect, the refs with respect. I think that's probably what you're getting at.
The relational. There's three things that stood out to me: is being a product of your environment, and we've always heard that, but now thinking about how you ended up being the person that was their environment. So you were creating a new product. So it was like you trying to, like all the good that you got from your dad, from your coach, and I'm thinking about that now, being a father and being in front of my kids. It's like, what environment do I want them to be in? And how do they change from that? But the relational part of it, like you said, everybody talks about it. How did you create those relationships? And something again with Mountain View that was crazy to me, and their demographic is a little bit different. We always said south side of the freeway. But it was like we would have some of the higher wealth statuses, and we would have a lot of the lowest wealth statuses, and they would all play together. And they would all. It was, some schools are usually more similar everywhere, but I felt like we were on real broad ends of the spectrum, and it was like 50-50. and they all still fought together. I feel like the parents were there. You know, did you even think about that when you were coaching? I mean, how did you get that to come in? And like when you're talking about creating a relationship, I mean, do you have any specific examples? You don't have to say any names, but I mean, like how you went about it.
I think you have to be real with it.
Yeah.
You know, it can't be a fake thing. Those relationships have to mean something to the kid. If they don't mean anything, the kid can see right through it. So it has to be real and it has to be intentional.
Yep.
So my whole goal was not to win football games. My whole goal was to build relationships with these kids, knowing that if you pour into people, the results are going to take care of themselves, right? So by intentional, I mean I would track them down at school and find them in the hall and pull them aside and how's it going, you know, and I wanted to really know how it was going. And I made a point to talk about their family, how things were going there. You know, if I knew they were struggling with something, how's your mom doing? Is she okay? You know, I heard this about your dad. Is your dad doing all right? You know, or hey, I had your brother, you know, on the team a couple years ago. What's he doing now? You know, and it's like actual real stuff and very intentional about your conversations. And so you're really wanting to know how you can invest in these kids' lives. If they're struggling with something, do they need help in school? Is there somebody that doesn't have enough money to buy groceries? You know, do they not have Christmas for them and their little brother? You know, is their sister battling cancer? Whatever it is, like that to me was important. And I felt like if all I did was coach them, teach them the game of football, like I've absolutely missed my platform.
Yeah.
Like we spend so much time with those kids. If all they did was learn a couple of X's and O's, completely missed it. You know, we have a chance as coaches to be one of the greatest influences on their lives. And so I saw it that way. So for me, the relationship part was my favorite part. You know, I'd call them out of class. I'd call them in on my prep. I'd, talk to them after practice, whatever it was. But I wanted to know about them. Like I wanted to be a part of their life and make a difference in their life, not just coach the game of football.
You know, people talk about being able to keep the passion the whole time, and I'm just thinking right now, because you did the same thing with your coaches. Every coach would run through a wall with you. But then you had your twins. The year you started, you being your first time being a head coach, and at 5A, one of the biggest schools at Mount View, year you had twins. Yeah. Which I have 2 kids right now. I can't imagine how you did that. Plus, you still had your daughter that was older. Yeah, right. Same here. You obviously got it from the environment that you had, but how did you keep it? Like even when you retired, and you maybe you don't have to tell everybody, but it was obviously because you're kids. You didn't want to coach against them. I mean, you had more juice. Nobody ever looked like you ever lost juice, ever. Right. But you did. You poured into every kid. You poured into every coach. And then you never made an excuse. You're a great dad, which to me was awesome. Your kids are unbelievably respectful and everything like that, you know. How do you think you keep? I mean, everybody is like, "Oh, I poured everything out I have, or I give everything I have." You know what I mean? I've never seen that out of you, and it just was. It's never gone away. I mean, what do you think that is?
Same answer as you. You love it. Like I loved it, and I love being a dad. You know, I love being a coach. It was something that was my passion, something I always wanted to do. So when I got that opportunity. There's no other way to do it but all in. You know what I mean? Just be all in. And it's just like you know, when you started with this idea, you knew where you wanted it to go. Other people maybe couldn't see it at the beginning, but man, you worked your butt off, T, like you did. Started it from nothing, you know, and look where it is now. So, and I know it's because you love it. It's because you're passionate about it. So for me, it didn't feel like work. It felt like, man, what a gift, you know, what a gift. So why not do it all out? Why not give it everything you have? And it was hard, don't get me wrong. Just like I know what you do is super hard. It drains you. I was, you know, I'd get burnout and things like that. Had fantastic support at home. My wife, amazing. My kids were super flexible, you know, with the hours that it takes to coach and things like that. But I knew what I wanted to do, and I knew that I'd been put there for a reason. And when you love it, it doesn't seem as much like work as it does a gift.
Yeah. Being grateful that perspective changes everything in life.
Yeah.
And I think the love it thing is so cliche right now. And for me, when I was younger too, it was trying to make money or trying to do this.
Right.
But I remember I coached with Ras one year with baseball,
Yeah.
and more because I loved him than the thought about coaching. And as soon as I did it, I was like, I got to figure out how to do this. You know?
Right.
It was the
hooks
coolest.
were in.
It was the coolest thing ever. You know. So I try to talk to my young guys about it. They're like, well, should I do this or should I? I'm like, man, what do you have the most passion about? And I think it's super hard to figure out what you love doing.
Yeah.
But I feel like we're both lucky that we were able to figure that out.
Man, if you can find something you
Right.
love, go after it and don't ever let it go.
Don't stop. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't stop.
Yeah.
How about some things that you feel like you wish you could have done better through the coaching at Mountain View or your younger years, even when you coached at Timberline and Centennial before,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So I started at Lake Hazel, believe it or not.
I went to school
Lake
there.
Hazel Middle School for a
Yeah.
year, 97. Went to Boise High for a year, Timberline for 4 years, Centennial for 6 years, and then ended up at Mountain View for 15 years. So bounced around, to different spots. Things I wish I would have done better. I think,
Or was there like a
yeah.
situation you feel like you mishandled or something like that?
You know what? I think early on, you're just young. You have the passion for it, and I think I was like 30, 32 at the time, something like that. I can't remember exactly, but I was in my early 30s when I got the head job at Mountain View. And there's things that you just don't know yet from being a head coach or not having been a head coach. You don't have that experience. You know what it was like to be an assistant, but when you get the job as the head coach, everything changes, and you're in charge of everything. The buck stops with you, all of that. And I think in the beginning, I maybe wanted to just prove that I was the right hire and that I could do it. And so I'd probably let some things go, delegate some things a little bit better in the beginning, pass that off to people that were capable and that could do it instead of trying to do it all myself. And they're just, there's only so much of you to go around even when you are passionate. So I think that experience that I needed, the only way I could get it was to do it, right? To be a head coach. And so in the beginning, just not having the experience, not necessarily life experience, but coaching experience where my vision, my scope of things was big enough that I could handle some of the tougher situations that came around. So sometimes, what does that mean really? I mean, sometimes I might have given more kids a chance, played more kids, found more opportunities for them, might have had different conversations with coaches, given them more autonomy, things like that. I would have known how to handle parents better, because that's a big piece of it. By the end, I think that was working really well, relationships with parents. In the beginning, they didn't know what to think of me. I didn't know what to think of them. And again, not having that experience, the only way you get it is walking through it. And so some of those things, I think in the beginning, I definitely would have liked to have been better at, but I just didn't have the experience for it yet.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you talking with the parents, it's crazy to me. This is not on any of my other coaches, but out of any sport, I've never had a coach or a parent or a coach say something negative about you, which is crazy to me, because I know the things have been bad about me, which again, I'm kind of a hothead, like I come from a little bit.
Sure.
My guy Ras,
Sure.
And stuff like in Hummer and stuff like that, which are guys I love, but it's the thing that I admire the most about you again is everybody wanted to kill it for you all the time, but you did it in a way to where it was never making anybody feel bad. So even the fact that you're thinking about right now, I wish I could have got more guys in and stuff like that, is pretty awesome to see or to hear too. It's something I keep learning from you.
Appreciate it.
The only time that I saw you actually in a bad mood, now I think about it, was when Leighton was missing.
Yeah.
We found out about a week before summer ended that he was leaving,
Right.
or before track. You know, you had like a lot of adversity where like a player would go down,
Yeah.
or a kid would leave like that. You know,
Yeah.
and I'm thinking about you being like a leader. Like to me, I look at a business side now, not just the coaching side. To me, you
Sure.
were a boss. You were a boss of 100 kids, plus all their parents, plus all your coaches, plus, I mean, again, the football coach has a huge role in the high school. You know, when you have things like that, how are you able to kind of flip them, or like what's your mindset on those? Like how are you always able to overcome them? We never had a losing season. Maybe you did, but I don't ever remember one. I mean, you always figured out how to still finish close to the top, if not the top. You know, I mean, how did you figure out how to just keep going, or if like even in life, like things haven't been easy. You know,
Yeah.
you and I have talked about things. You know,
Sure.
where's that perspective come from?
I think adversity is a part of life. Like, it just is. On a daily basis, really, if you think about it. And so there's always a couple of ways to look at it. You know, you could see adversity as like a roadblock, or you can see it as a obstacle. You know, an obstacle you can get around. You can find a way around it. A roadblock, that's it, right? You're done. And so adversity is just like, it's always there. And so as an athlete and as a coach, we try to communicate that to our kids, and I tried to live it out, and I, in a sense, try to convince myself of that, right? Like, stuff's going to happen. Things are going to go bad. And we always told our team, it's not if adversity shows up, it's when.
Yeah.
Because it will. In every sport, every game, right? Like, it's going to show up. So then how do you handle it? And to me, it's attitude, right? It's just your attitude. Do you see the glass half empty, or do you see it half full? You know, is it a roadblock or is it an obstacle? And to let it beat you, it means you just give up. You just give in, you know, and that's just not an option for me, you know. And again, maybe that's the way I was wired from my own parents, the coaches that I had, but giving in was just not an option. You know, you could curl up in the corner, or you could come out swinging. And yeah, I think it was an important lesson for the team to see, you know, and have that modeled by their coach or coaches, not just me, but everyone else on the team, that, guys, you know,
Do you feel like
life
that
gave you
mindset-
lemons, but got to make lemonade out of it.
Right. Do you feel like that mindset has increased? Like, how about with the 15 years that you coached? Do you feel like I've seen it, and I'm trying to maybe to change my perspective.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, maybe I'm hyper focusing on it, but, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but I don't want to forget that. I thought you were talking like, I felt like the adversity, maybe because it wasn't shown so much on social media, or maybe because people didn't see it, but I don't remember things hitting me so hard. And then I feel like each year it's like some things that were adversity might not have been adversity the year before, you know, like because of how a kid perceives it, you know, or how new things become adversity. Or now it's like, again, I mean, have you seen, did it get harder for you as the years went to figure out how to relate with the kids, how to change that relationship, how to get through some of the mental adversity, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
The more that's become out in the public, you know what I mean? Or did you know that, did people talk to you back that in a private room and you always were
Right.
working on that?
Right.
Or did you see like some of that coming out more as you started coaching? Like, was it harder at the end of your career than it was at the beginning?
To deal with adversity is what you're asking,
I'm
right?
thinking,
Or-
well, you were talking about with the kids, so to me, that's why I wanted to stop you, because with the athletes, sometimes I see the stuff that they're complaining about, worried
Yeah.
about,
Yeah.
stressed about.
Yeah.
Like, I think everybody's own perception is stress, whether it's real to us or not. I see some of these things where it's like, man, you really shouldn't be stressing about that, but I have to come a new way to try to get them to not stress about it.
Yeah.
You know, that I don't think it would have stressed somebody 3 years ago. I mean,
Right.
did you feel like it was harder to coach some of these kids later down the road than it was at the beginning, or was it just each year you just were learning with it, you were rolling with it? I mean, you never made it look
Mhm.
hard, but was it
Sure.
harder?
Yeah, it's probably a combination of things, right? Like, when I grew up, you just, like, you didn't complain about stuff. If you were struggling with stuff, you just didn't voice it. You know what I mean? Things were a lot more private. You know, I was born in the 70s, grew up in the 80s. There was just a different mentality. Like, you don't complain about your situation, your coaches, that type of thing. You just go out and do your thing. Like, you're supposed to. That was the expectation. I would say probably with every generation like that, that piece was a little bit harder in the past. You know what I mean? Like, you just didn't talk about stuff. You just toughed it out. You just showed up. You just did your thing, you know. As the years have gone on, athletics are just a piece of society, right? Like culture, what's going on around them. You can't like exclude that, even though we do have some different ways to handle it than maybe people in the regular world in society, I guess, outside of athletics. But I felt like as it went on, maybe parents who were trying to provide for their kids, they were trying to provide everything for them. In the educational world, sometimes we call them bulldozer parents, right? They just kind of bulldoze all the obstacles out of the way for kids. And so now when adversity shows up to a kid, if it wasn't removed for them, they're not quite sure how to handle it, you know, because mom and dad always took care of it, right? And I don't mean that, like, I'm not picking on people, I'm just saying, you know, I've got young kids too.
So it's not the kids' fault, it's all the parents' fault, is what you're saying.
Well,
product of your environment.
Right, product of your environment. But they aren't as equipped now, I don't think, to handle adversity when hard situations come up. And so I felt like it was my job as a coach to really verbalize what they were facing. Like, there is adversity, there is hard things, they are going to show up. But that doesn't mean that the answer is no. That doesn't mean you have to give up. That doesn't mean that you quit the first time it's hard. So that part of coaching, I guess, to get back to your question, by the end of it, it was harder to find that grit in kids where they were just going to overcome adversity no matter what. So we almost had to build it in. You know, you had to build in adversity. You had to build in tough situations, and you definitely had to talk about it, right? You had to let your kids know that, hey, on Friday night when we play the game, we could, you know, fumble the ball on the first drive. We could throw an interception. We could get scored on. They could march right down the field and score on us. But it doesn't matter, because we're going to do what we do. We're going to stick together as a group. We're going to trust the process, and things are going to be all right. So back to your question again, I think by the end I had to be more intentional with what I told the kids about adversity and how to overcome that.
I love it. So I'm just going to be picking your brain right now on advice to help me and my coaches. So, and even now being a parent, like being the bulldozer parent, I mean, my 2-year-old daughter, like, there's something in her way, I want to clear it right away.
Yes.
I mean, she has it.
You want to give them the best life possible.
But then I see my wife do it, and then I'm like, hey, you got to let her go through that. But then I see myself, like, when nobody's telling me, I'm being the bulldozer parent, you know, and she's only 2.
Yeah.
Like, a kid at the park was grabbing her the other day, and I was about to drop kick the kid off the park, you know what I mean? But he was being a 2-year-old, right? So, you know, we don't always get to talk to the parents.
Right.
You know, how... So with us, with the kids, you know, because it comes off to me as more of like a victim mentality. But like you said, they kind of are the product of their environment. It kind of is coming from their parents. And it is never ill intent from the parents. Right. You know, like I just said, I'm doing the same thing right now, and I'm a parent. You know, what would be your strategy, you know, to help them overcome that? You know what I mean? But when you talked about, you brought that in. You know, besides just talking about it, like, what were some examples that you would bring in to where, like, I mean, did you bring it in practice with us in the off season? Would we do it? Like, how was that brought in?
Yeah, I think it's you try to weave it into the fabric of everything, right? Like how to deal with adversity and the toughness. So let's take an example in the weight room. Your finisher that you would do with the kids, right? Like, they were done. They went through a hard workout, and in their mind they're thinking, I don't have anything left. I'm exhausted. Yet we would do the finisher, and they realized they still had more in the tank, and they would push themselves beyond that. On the football field, it could be we'd put them in an adverse situation, like we're doing drills, individual. All of a sudden, you know, I blow the whistle. Everybody stop. We're on the 2-yard line. You know, we're backed up on the 2-yard line. We got to get a first down right now, or we got to punt and the game's over. You know, that type of thing. And put them in a situation like a real game situation. Hey, ball's on the 4. it's 4th down and goal. There's 5 seconds left on the clock. We have to score right now, that kind of thing. So you'd put them in those type of situations, backed up on the field, sudden change, turnover, all of those type of things where it's immediate adversity and you have to learn how to deal with it on the spot. And again, it's every facet of it where you can weave it in is the way to do it, because it kind of becomes then that habit for them that, hey, adversity is going to show up. It's not if, it's when, and then how am I going to respond, right? So you're doing it in the weight room, you're doing it on the field. We had attitude meetings every Monday before football practice out on the field. We would meet in the lecture hall there, and we would cover topics, right? Different sports philosophy topics, and adversity was always a big one that we talked about, and so we would talk, we'd kind of recap the week before. Hey guys, we had a tough loss last Friday, but we don't have any time to pout. We got another one. Guess what, right? Like, we just played Rocky, now we got to turn around and play Eagle back to back. So we got to let go of that. We got to show up today. We got to have the best practice we've had so far this year. They don't care that we lost that game. They're coming after us. So we either kind of curl up or we get back on the horse and we go back after it again. So it's conversations. It's modeling it for them. It's on the field. It's in the weight room. It's like everything you do, you have to have intentional purpose and conversations with it to teach them how to deal with it, because maybe they haven't ever in their life. Maybe they were always told yes. Everything in their life is a yes. Or they removed every obstacle, parents maybe, in front of them, and they didn't have to face it. Again, parents probably were trying to help and do the right thing. Right. But that part that's missing is, well, what do you do when the answer is no? What do you do when you get rejected the first time? What if Michael Jordan never played basketball again after he got cut from his sophomore basketball team? There's a ton of those. Thomas Edison, over and over and over again. If you just stop at a no or a little bump in the road or something like that, you're never ever probably going to experience what's on the other side. How to handle that.
Kind of my role now is, I work with a few teams and a couple of the pro athletes, but that's what I kind of get to do. I get to kind of mentor, like, one of the coaches is like, hey, Judd's having a bad day, or he's not doing or hey, college, this guy pulled their scholarship, so now he's going to these schools which he doesn't think are as good. And sometimes I'm in those conversations. I love it more than anything, but I'm trying to get better at those too. But sometimes I feel like the first thing that comes in my head is they're making an excuse, or they're being a victim, or it's like everything else is somebody else's fault, And so trying to flip that. I mean, almost even just lately, what I've been talking about, and which I've seen in football. To me, every sport in athletics, pressure is huge, and people always talk about pressure as a privilege. What I see it as is like, so many people, if you're not in sports, there's other way to get it, but sports, it's like you can get through day to day, just slide them by, and you never have any pressure to be held accountable, to do something, to perform at your best. In football, like, you only have 10 games, sometimes less, sometimes a little bit more, but every week matters, like, more than anything. And that's why it's like those Friday nights, you'll see some people either excel or collapse. And now I'm realizing the guys that are collapsing, it's because that pressure is so scary, but at the same time, I've been starting to realize, like, that's when you do win, how great you feel. Like, that's what it's all about. And so many people don't even live life like that. And that's the same thing with basketball, volleyball. I mean, every game is so huge, but that, I'm just thinking to myself in my head, sitting down with the last athlete I talked about, I think if I would have just told him, hey, look at this, you are dealing with pressure. Look at that, but look at the opportunity that you have, that nobody else even has to deal with this. I do talk about the kids when they get scholarships, they start really stressing. Or even just offers, even if it's, NAIAs or which I think is awesome, but whatever, they're like, I don't know what to do. I'm like, how many people don't even have anything? You know what I mean? So this is a good stress, enjoy it, figure it out, go, attack it head on. But that's probably my biggest struggle, but also probably the thing I love the most about what I do now is talking to kids about that. My football teams I work with probably can't stand my hype speeches. I give them every either Friday or Saturday because I try to give them the hype speech. My man Cherry over here has seen me give a couple that are pretty good, some that are mediocre. Nice. But I love it. That's awesome. Talking about adversity, I think that's kids don't see it.
I know.
They don't see it.
And I mean,
and it's going to happen.
Yeah, it will. and I'm sure you would agree, but like I've learned much more in life from failures than I ever have from successes. Like that's where you learn. You know, to fail is actually okay. Like we have to, I think, allow people to fail, because when you fail, you learn from that experience, and you have to change, right? You something has to be different.
Yeah.
You know, you learn that you love it. You learn that you don't love it. You learn that there's a better way to do it. You learn that I just gotta gut it out. You learn, you know, everything about yourself and your actual character in life's failures, right? Success, you never change, right? Because everything went great. Well, I'll just keep doing that, right? Well, the problem is you're not going to be successful all the time at everything you do. So you don't learn from winning, right? You don't learn from things just going great, you know, just all gravy and all that. That's not how you learn. Like you have to have failures. You got to get back up. You got to dust yourself off. You know, you got to figure out, okay, if I still really do love this and I got shut down, well, okay, now what do I do? What angle do I have to come from now? How do I need to look at it now? What can I do myself to get around this? You know, even if everybody else is telling you you can't, or
Yeah.
you shouldn't, or you won't make it, or, you know, if you've got the right mindset to do that, you learn from those failures, then how to adapt and make that change and continue, you know, and pursue.
So that's huge to me. But think about telling yourself that though when you were 17.
Yeah.
Because that's where I'm struggling, especially again with social media. It does so many good things, but it also does some other things. But like to me, the law of familiarity. They hear that quote that you just said a lot. Now it's like,
Yeah.
oh, you learn from your failures. That used
Yeah.
to get me, like the Michael Jordan story,
Yeah.
the Tom Brady story, getting
Right.
two quarterbacked all the way through Michigan. Like to me, like that stuff got me going. But now it's like one of those quotes on the wall. After you see it for a while,
Yeah.
it's just there.
Yeah.
Kids hear that all the time. You know, and I'm thinking to myself, like, I hated it back then. I remember a 12-year-old team. There was, like, one team I thought I was supposed to be on, and I got put on this other team, and I was crying on a club team. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
and luckily I had my dad there help support, and he taught me how to work hard more than anybody I've ever been around. But, like, how would you make somebody aware of that, or yourself back then, to say, like, hey, it's going to happen? Like, to that awareness of, like, failure is awesome without just saying it, because
Yeah.
I still say that to my kids all the time, and sometimes I can see it's coming on deaf ears because you've heard it so many times,
Yeah.
and they still haven't faced
Right.
failure, or if they have, somebody got them out of it, whether it's
Yep.
a mom, dad, or a coach, or
Yep.
themselves. You know, how would you go back and tell yourself, because you didn't want to fail when you were 16 or
Right.
before you were going to PLU. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
How do you think we can make somebody in that moment, or do you not know until you're past it? Because you're right. I mean, my biggest
Yeah.
business jumps have ever been when I almost lost the business,
Yeah.
or when I almost lost the building.
Yeah.
And then literally within 90 days, then it was the best, you know, and then I met my wife. You know what I mean? Like the best things ever happened to me, you know? But how do you tell somebody when they're in the thick of it?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you do actually have to go through it, right? But a lot of it is also just like thought discipline, you know, mental discipline. And I would say all the greats in any sport that you could pick, that mental toughness is the edge, right? So you can train the body, you know, you can get bigger, stronger, faster, all of that. But the difference between a Tom Brady and somebody else, or a Michael Jordan and somebody else, a Tiger Woods and somebody else, they were different. They were wired different, right? And so that thought discipline, right? And it's a discipline, meaning it takes work. In other words, you have to talk yourself through it. You have to repeat it until you believe it, right? How are you going to work through failures? You know, you can get opinions from other people. You can, like you said, look at quotes on social media, that kind of thing. But that internal piece, right? That has to come from that person. The greatest kids that I coached, you know, at Mountain View, they had that killer instinct, that thought discipline, right?
Yeah.
The mental toughness where it did not matter. It literally didn't. Like, there's all kinds of cliches and quotes, but they didn't care. They didn't care who we were playing, what the weather was like, what day it was, how good the other team was. They had that mental toughness, you know, the fortitude where they had just absolutely had told themselves, I am not going to settle for anything else than success. Yeah, I might hit a speed bump, I might drop a pass, but throw it to me again, coach. Give me another chance. You know what I mean? And I don't know how, other than saying it to people over and over and trying to cultivate that in them, brainwashing them to believe that.
Right,
you know
right.
what I mean? It's tough because the great ones have that. Other people struggle with it. So how do you get those people that struggle with it? How do you build mental toughness, right?
Yeah.
I think that's what you're asking. How do you tell
I've
a
seen it
kid
happen.
who's stressing out and they're and you're telling them, oh, don't stress, everything's going to be okay, but they are stressed. How do you get them past that? That's a tough one.
Yeah.
That's tough.
I think about it all the time, like you hear it, like even with you, like you wish you knew then what you know now.
Yeah.
And everybody always says that, and it's like I'm trying to tell some of these kids that, and they're like, and I'm like, that was me, but I'm like, seriously, if you could listen.
Yeah.
It's so.
When you're
That's
in the
what
moment,
coaching
right?
is awesome.
It's
Yeah.
When you're in the moment, because I try to tell kids all the time, hey, right now this seems like the biggest thing in your life. A year from now, it's probably not going to be that big, right? But when you're living it, when you're in that moment, it is big. It is a big thing, and it is kind of dominating your thought world and how you operate every day.
Yeah. The awareness piece is something that I've learned from you, Colby Blaine, some other coaches, and it's been something I've been trying to put in with my kids. Why football for you? Your dad coached everything.
Yeah.
I mean, you were only smart enough to play linebacker, or what? Or why football?
Yeah.
Why'd you end up coaching that?
Man, I don't know why you love things per se, but because I tried all kinds of stuff. Like I tried baseball, and for me, I wasn't good at it, and it felt like a lot of standing around, that kind of thing. I loved basketball. I wasn't as good at it as I wanted to be. I put in time and stuff like that to try to be better, but I just wasn't a great basketball player. I was just kind of an average basketball player. Ran track, had some success at that. Football, I don't know, I guess why, but I always loved it. I loved the team aspect of it. Actually, I think I started off with the right person. That's probably maybe one of the main reasons.
Optimist coach?
Yes, because I played soccer, wrestled, all that kind of stuff. But Coach Hardy, we called him Coach Dan, that's probably what made the difference for me. Because when I first started playing football, I loved the game of football, but I wasn't the biggest kid. I wasn't the fastest kid on the team. But he made it fun for us. Like, he found a role for everybody. And then that's probably it. I probably stuck with football because I got to start off at a very young age with someone who just had a tremendous influence on me. Made it fun.
That's awesome.
Made the game fun. And because I already liked it, but then when I played it and it was what I thought it would be, then you wanted to keep playing. Like,
Makes you think about the impact you have on them.
For sure.
How about the people don't know that you're also an art teacher.
Yeah.
Which is why I always talk about why Mountain View always had the coolest gear.
Right.
And you always had the new, facial hair.
Right.
You always had the most savvy, but even music. I know you're huge into music, mean, first off, I guess where'd that kind of passion come from? But I know that kind of came into, I think, how you coached and how you came about things, and I think the organization that you had. Like I've been in a lot of different places, and I feel like there's always just something a little bit different about how you did it, and I think it was because, like, even for me, my whole life's just been sports dominated, right?
Yeah.
Now a little bit business dominated, but you had another side of things, Where did the artistic side of you come from, and how'd you integrate that with football and sports and coaching and life?
Yeah, I'm not really sure where that came from. I just know that I always loved to draw. When I was a kid, I'd draw football players. I'd draw like medieval knights, stuff like that. I'd make up some creatures, whatever. I always loved to draw. So I don't know. There's no one else really in my family, like immediate family, that had that passion. My mom's side were farmers, all farmers on her side. My dad's side, kind of hardworking, blue collar, workers, things like that. So I don't really know anybody else kind of in my immediate family, or even kind of outside of the immediate family, that really liked art, and was drawn to it, no pun intended, but like I was. But it's something that I've always liked. Like, it's always been a passion of mine. And I had an absolute blast teaching art. I got to know like a whole different set of kids for the most part, and then I think your question is then, how did that kind of bleed over into football? I think football, there's an art to coaching, right? There's the science part of coaching, X's and O's. If you do this, this happens, all of that. But there's an art to it, and I think the creative side of me, that art side of me, maybe allowed me to coach a little bit different, to see things a little bit different, to interact with people a little bit different. And so I think those two kind of, it was a good marriage.
It was crazy how you got those to blend together, and it was
yeah.
awesome to see.
Yeah, I don't know. It was just fun to be able to incorporate, I guess, sort of two different worlds, right? Like teaching art, I would get some football kids in class, but generally it was a different population, and I enjoyed getting to know those kids just as much. So taking what I learned from the art world, just the creative side of things, the art of things, and kind of blending that then with the science of football, I think just gave me a different perspective on life, a bigger picture maybe, where every single thing didn't revolve around football, even though I was completely invested. It just gave me maybe more of a holistic view of life, which then bleeds over to how you coach and how you interact with kids. So,
what about, with and I've thought of it a little bit as an art, like the art of greatness. When I think about with you and business and everything, to me, like I want to be. I mean, frankly, I want to be the best performance company in the country, like 100%. And I'm okay with saying that. I got guys on my staff say they want to be the best strength coaches in the world, and and we could say it straight faces. We know we're not there. But there's so, like, to me, the difference between being real close and being a Tom Brady is not that big.
Right.
You know what I mean? There's something that's there. So, like, you've been on some great teams. Like, 2016, right? We won.
Yep.
But you've been on some teams where maybe you only had one loss.
Yeah.
And it was that close from being a great team, which might even have had more talent. Or what do you feel like was the difference, between – because it's so close, and being aware of that greatness and being able to, like, capitalize on what you have, or being able to see it. To me, that's that the vision of it is so hard, to where even if the goal is state championship, national championship, make this much, do whatever it is, like, okay, that's my goal, but to see really what to get there and to see how close you are actually to it, and like the little things like you talked about earlier, like the discipline, what do you feel like separated your best teams, those teams, from the other ones? Because, your record's crazy, but you've obviously had some.
Yeah. There's factors, of course, like some things have to go your way, like injuries. You've got to have people healthy throughout the season. Guys that you're really counting on, they've got to be there at the end, like at their best, healthy and ready to go. Sometimes it's a schedule, the schedule played in your favor. You had to travel versus not traveling, things like that. But I think really, because you could say that about everybody, right? Like teams and different years and seasons and things like that. But I think chemistry, like the group, right? The chemistry that was built between that particular group. Yeah, the culture that team had. And we tried to obviously consistently have that same culture, and then always figure out what else could we add to make it even better, without sacrificing your fundamental beliefs, what you stood for as a program. But we were always hungry, trying to figure out what we could add.
So what was different about that team?
To what we were doing.
Besides the schedule and
that
help?
Team was a mix. And actually, let me say, and I've had multiple conversations with a bunch of guys on the team and stuff like that. A Keenan Patwell and a Tucker Rovig and just other kids, that played. Is it okay to use people's names?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay. All right. And I actually think, and also conversations with my coaches, I actually think that 15 team was probably the most talented of the two because you had the same group again the next year.
But then Roper showed up, right?
Yeah, but we had the same team, but on the year before we also had Trey Bell and Joe. I mean, Joe Ferris. Those two guys were fantastic. Just to name a couple, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm sure I could name other guys as well, but we essentially had basically the same group back on defense. We had a lot of the guys back on offense, but then you throw in, Gatorade Player of the Year and Trey. Ferris just went off that year, so we might have had a better team. But that next year, I think the difference with that group was.
You think it was because? Remind me, right though, because we were undefeated.
Yep,
the year we lost
all the way. And then lost to Rocky in the championship.
And Roper had like 6 touchdowns or something, right?
I don't remember. I just remember it didn't end well.
But so do you think that goes kind of back to our adversity?
Yeah.
The next year, do you think that loss helped us?
I do. We actually...
Because it was vice versa the year before.
Yep.
Rocky only had 1 loss, and it was to us.
Correct.
Then, and then the next year.
And we actually had 2 the year we won it. So we lost to Eagle the very first game of the year.
Yeah.
And then we lost to Capital the last regular season, just like barely. They beat us the last regular season game, and then that's who we faced in the championship and beat. But I do think there is something to that, right? Like where they had adversity earlier, overcame it, and ended up on top versus the other way around. We'd kind of burned through the schedule and were housing people and then ran into a really good Rocky team in the championship, and that game could have gone either way. I think both teams were super talented.
Yeah.
And if we played 10 times, we probably would have split. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right down the middle. It was just they were really good. We were really good. The 16 team though, like it was a mix between guys that I would say were super high character guys, some of those guys that I've named that were sort of like, flag bearers for the program type of thing. There was a good mix of those guys, and then we also had a mix of
We had some rough guys.
Yeah, you know.
Those were my boys I was trying to lean in on, but some rough dudes.
Yes, like super rough dudes and all different walks of life and stuff like that. But on a football team, I hate to say it, but you have to have some guys that are like right on the edge.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because in the end, it's a violent game. Like it really is. It's a physical, violent game, and you have to have some of those guys that are just a little bit off. Maybe a little bit crazy. We like
eyes
to call
going
them
all
dogs,
over the place,
right? And so we had that mix where they just felt like, hey, bring it, buddy. You know what I mean? Like that was already something that they had. And so our job was maybe kind of trying to guide and direct that really aggressive, kind of in-your-face attitude. We wanted them to be that way. We wanted them to be physical and aggressive and have that, hey, I don't care type attitude. But it had to fit within the philosophy of our program, right? So you're bringing this mix of guys that are, again, sort of maybe poster boy, and then guys that are just like a little bit on the edge. And so they made a good blend. But the thing was, they all worked with each other because they knew that we were good. Like they knew we had the talent, and so they pushed each other. And sometimes our practices were more competitive than the games because we'd get into a 2-minute drill to start practice, and our left tackle and our D end are going at it, and they're ticked because they don't want to give up a first down. And the other, you're holding me, and pretty soon they're almost going at it, And so hey, that's what I'm talking about. It's like right on the edge where, and then it would end, and it'd be like, sorry, man, I'm just trying to.
I feel like
do my job.
Those poster boys had enough cred to where they could string along like, hey, one more game. Hey, come on, one more game.
Yep.
Hey, let's make it. And to where the guys would follow them. And sometimes, you have the most vocal guy on the field and he's trying to be the poster boy, but he might not have that credit
Right.
yet, or he might not be, you know. So
Doesn't have the
we did
street
have the
cred.
we had the right balance there.
Yeah,
That was
and they were all super competitive.
Oh yeah.
And really talented. Like I don't want to lose that, or I don't want to
Yeah,
downplay
yeah.
that. They were a talented group that had to be channeled in the right direction. You know what I mean? And so we knew coming in they were going to be a good group, and that proved to be true. You know, that class, their last couple of years, they junior and senior year, they played in the championship. So
Love it.
yeah.
So now you aren't coaching. You
Yeah.
got two kids that are juniors. You got a daughter graduating this year from
Yep.
college.
Yep.
What are we doing next? When are we coaching again?
Man, I
You
don't
know
know.
I was gonna
That's
ask
a
you.
good question. That's a good question. I don't know what God's got for me in that area. I'm open to.
I mean, you got Cliff
The-
Rice. You got
yeah.
such a good environment over there.
True.
You got
True. Yeah.
some guys. I mean, it's so awesome to see what Cliff's done in such
For
a short
sure.
amount of time. They're Dane,
Yep.
everybody.
For sure. Yeah. That's a hard one. Second year out. You know, not coaching last year. That was my first year out. Was harder than this year, being removed a second year. I'm just loving being able to watch my boys play, like be a dad in the stands. It's just awesome. It's what I hoped it would be, and that's why I got out of it, so I could watch them. I didn't want to miss that. Didn't want to coach against them, you know, that type of thing. So that's been phenomenal. That said, Cliff gave me a just amazing opportunity to be a part of what he's built out there, and it's such a fun work environment and such a great culture out there. Like I'm not kidding, I have a blast at work. Some of the tasks are not my favorite tasks, right? But because of the people I work with,
Yeah.
you can do anything, right? Like there's nothing that you can't accomplish. And when it's fun to go to work, right, it doesn't feel like work. So I'm super thankful for that. The coaching piece, I don't know, in my heart of hearts, I don't feel like I'm done. I feel like I still have some in the tank. I don't know that I could be a head coach again, because I know what it takes, and I'm not going to do it part way. Like I'm just not wired that way. So I would either be all in or nothing as a head coach. And so knowing what it takes, and knowing that it took a long time to build it right, and then knowing that I literally gave everything I had to
Yeah.
it. I don't know that I have that still at 51, almost 52, but I think I could help somebody out. I think I could be a part of something cool, and just support somebody in their efforts to try to build something great.
I mean, and again, I'm not trying to just make you feel great about yourself, but there were, I mean, like kids on the other teams were like, man, I would have loved to play for Judd. You know, like the Tanners. You know what I mean? Like those are the. I mean, they're the greatest people, but they're like, oh,
Yeah.
Judd, I mean, what's Judd doing? I mean, and they love, you know, their coach they have now too. But I mean, everybody would talk about that. I just can't see you being done. It's crazy. What about maybe coaching at the collegiate level, coming with me out to C of I? Maybe I know Morosky loves you.
Hey, Mo's a great guy, and
Yeah.
Jewel, and there's a bunch of guys out there that I like. It's funny that you ask that, because in
You'd kill it.
1997, when I was teaching at Lake Hazel, so I'm a goal guy, right? Like I write down goals. I have a piece of paper. You would laugh. I've saved it all these years. It's in a plastic sleeve now, but it was on the back of like a vocab worksheet that I had handed out to kids, or
Yeah.
maybe it was even another teacher's vocab sheet. I don't remember, but I wrote out all my goals, like what I wanted to accomplish, and it was like timelines, for want to be a varsity coach, want to be a varsity head coach, want to win a state championship, like all that stuff. I wrote it out in 97. The last one on there, the only one that I haven't checked off, is coaching college football. So we'll see. I don't know.
I'll make
We'll
sure
see.
Mo calls you after this. So. No, I think
Appreciate
I
that.
think you would be just, again, I think the way that you create a relationship, I think that college has been really cool for me to experience. You know what I mean? I especially being young when I got into it. Definitely not a head coach, but in the strength side of things. But you get people from all walks of life, way different than what I grew up in Idaho,
Yeah.
and so I grew up around here. But seeing it at the collegiate level, it's crazy, and but it's fun.
Yeah.
And I think you dominate there.
I
you know.
appreciate that, man.
Yeah. I think it'd be
It's
fun.
it's it's still in there somewhere.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we'll see.
Well, maybe I'll see what I can do to get a couple of my guys over there. We'll see what we can make happen.
That's awesome.
Judd, man, you helped change the whole trajectory of OTF, and I think it wasn't just because you let us do it, but I think it was because what I learned from you too, and you believing in us, and appreciate
Thank
it,
you.
man. Thank you for everything.
Man, thank you. I can't thank you enough. And it was a blast working with you, man. So I'm hoping we get to do it again.
Even being a father and a husband and everything, man.
Yeah.
You're huge. Faith, all of that, man. I've learned so much from you. I appreciate it.
That's awesome. I appreciate it, man.
Love you, man. Thanks.
Love you. Absolutely.